Rain hammered the bulletproof windows of the black SUVs, choking the circular driveway of the Moretti estate. Inside that fortress of marble and blood money, Elena Hart stood frozen in a hallway that smelled like expensive cologne and old violence, staring into the eyes of the man who would either save her life or destroy it completely. Lucien Moretti, the name whispered in back rooms where bodies disappeared, had his hand wrapped around her wrist, and for reasons she couldn't explain, she wasn't pulling away. "You don't belong here," he said, voice low and dangerous. She should have run. Instead, she stayed. "If you want to see how a Brooklyn bookstore girl survives falling in love with New York's most feared mafia boss, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels." Ishang. The invitation arrived 3 days before Elena's world collapsed. Her cousin Maya pressed the heavy black envelope into her hands during their usual Tuesday coffee meetup at the small cafe 2 blocks from the bookstore where Elena worked. The paper felt expensive, wrong, like something that didn't belong in Elena's cramped studio apartment with its peeling paint and radiator that clanked all winter. "You have to come with me," Maya said, pushing her designer sunglasses up into her hair. Everything about Maya screamed money, the kind of money that came from marrying into one of New York's established families, the kind Elena would never understand. "It's at the Moretti estate. Everyone who matters will be there." Elena turned the envelope over in her hands. No return address, just her name written in gold script that probably cost more than her weekly paycheck. "I don't know anyone who matters," Elena said quietly. "You know me." Maya leaned forward, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against the table. "Please, Elle, I need you there. Richard's going to be working the room all night, and I can't stand being alone in a crowd of sharks." That was how Maya always described her husband's world. Sharks, predators, men in expensive suits who smiled with too many teeth. Elena should have said no. She almost did. But Maya had been there during the worst year of Elena's life, after the accident that killed her parents, when grief felt like drowning in dark water with no surface in sight. Maya showed up with food, with silence, with the kind of friendship that didn't require words. So Elena said yes. Now standing outside the Moretti mansion 3 nights later, rain soaking through her second-hand dress, Elena realized she'd made a terrible mistake. The estate rose from the cliffs like something out of a Gothic novel. All sharp angles and tall windows that glowed gold against the storm. Security guards in black suits stood at every entrance, their faces blank, their hands never far from their jackets. Expensive cars lined the driveway. Women in diamonds and furs rushed from car doors to the covered entrance, laughing like the rain was just another inconvenience money could fix. Elena didn't belong here. She knew it. They would know it the second she stepped inside. Maya grabbed her arm before she could retreat. "Don't even think about running. I should go home." "You promised." Maya pulled her toward the entrance where a security guard was checking names against a tablet. "Besides, you look beautiful. Stop doubting yourself." Elena didn't feel beautiful. She felt like an imposter in a dress that didn't fit right, with hair that had already started frizzing in the humidity, surrounded by people who probably spent more on shoes than she made in a month. Inside was worse. The entrance hall stretched up 3 stories, dominated by a massive chandelier that threw fractured light across marble floors and oil paintings of dead men in expensive frames. Music drifted from somewhere deeper in the house, live jazz, sophisticated and smooth. Waiters moved through clusters of guests carrying champagne on silver trays. Everyone looked comfortable here. Everyone except Elena. "I'll find Richard," Maya said, already scanning the crowd. "Stay close." But the crowd swallowed Maya within seconds, and Elena found herself alone in a sea of strangers who spoke in low voices about things she didn't understand. Business deals, political favors, offshore accounts, conversations that felt dangerous even to overhear. She pressed against the wall, trying to make herself invisible. It almost worked. Then a man in a gray suit looked at her. Really looked. And Elena saw the exact moment he cataloged everything about her. Cheap dress, wrong shoes, no jewelry except the simple silver chain her mother left her. His eyes dismissed her before moving on, and somehow that felt worse than if he'd said something cruel out loud. Elena needed air. She slipped away from the main room, following a hallway that seemed quieter, less crowded. Her heels clicked against marble that probably cost more per square foot than her entire apartment. Doors lined both sides, all closed, all probably leading to rooms she had no business entering. She should have turned around. She meant to. But then she heard raised voices behind one of the doors, and curiosity pulled her closer. "Don't care what excuse you have." The voice was male, cold, precise. "You move product through my territory, you pay the tax. That's how this works. The Italians are bleeding us dry. Then you should have thought about that before you tried to undercut me." Elena's heart hammered. She needed to leave. Now. But her feet wouldn't move. "Please, Mr. Moretti, give me one more month." The sound that followed made Elena's blood freeze. Not a gunshot. Worse. A wet, heavy thud. Then silence. She stumbled backward, her shoulder hitting the wall. The door opened. A man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, wiping his hands on a cloth that came away red. He looked up and saw her. Elena couldn't breathe. She knew this man. Everyone in New York knew this man, even if they'd never seen him. Lucien Moretti. The name spoken in whispers. The boss who rebuilt his father's empire from ashes and made it more powerful, more feared than ever before. His eyes locked on hers. Dark eyes, empty of warmth, the kind of eyes that had seen too much violence to ever look fully human again. Elena turned to run. She made it 3 steps before he caught her. His hand closed around her wrist, not rough, but immovable. He spun her around so fast her back hit the wall, and suddenly he was right there, close enough that she could smell expensive cologne mixed with something metallic that made her stomach turn. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly. "I'm sorry. I didn't see anything. I swear. What's your name?" The question threw her. She expected threats, violence, maybe the same wet sound she'd heard through the door, not this calm, measured curiosity. "Elena?" she whispered. "Elena what?" "Heart." He studied her face like he was memorizing it, looking for lies, looking for danger. She must have passed some test because after a long moment, he released her wrist. "Who brought you?" "My cousin, Maya Castellano." Something shifted in his expression. Not quite recognition, but close. "Castellano, Richard's wife." Elena nodded. "You're not part of this world," Lucien said. It wasn't a question. "No." "Then why are you here?" "Because she asked me to come." He almost smiled. Almost. "Bad reason to walk into a den of wolves." Elena's throat was dry. "I'm starting to realize that." For a moment, neither of them moved. The hallway felt too small, too warm. Elena could hear her pulse in her ears, could feel the weight of his attention like something physical. Then voices echoed from the main room, laughter, music swelling, and Lucien stepped back. "Go back to the party," he said. "Don't wander off again." She should have run, should have grabbed Maya and left immediately, but something in his voice stopped her. Not a threat. Almost concern? "What happened in there?" Elena asked before she could stop herself. Lucien's expression went cold again. "Nothing that concerns you." Someone was begging, "Elena." Her name in his mouth felt like a warning and something else she couldn't identify. "Go back to the party. Forget you were here. Forget you heard anything." "I can't just—" "You can. You will." He moved closer again, and Elena's breath caught. "Because if you don't, if you say one word about what you heard tonight, I can't protect you from the consequences. Do you understand?" She understood. She understood that this man was dangerous, that she'd stumbled into something far beyond her comprehension, that the smart thing was to nod and run. So she nodded. But she didn't run. Not yet. "Why would you protect me?" she asked. The question seemed to surprise him. He tilted his head slightly, studying her with those dark, unreadable eyes. "I don't know," he said finally. Then he walked away, disappearing through a door at the end of the hallway, leaving Elena alone with her racing heart and the knowledge that she'd just looked into the eyes of a monster, and somehow survived. But Elena found Maya 20 minutes later standing near the bar with a champagne flute and a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "There you are." Maya said, relief flooding her face. I thought you left. Almost did. Richard's stuck in some endless conversation about shipping routes. Want to get out of here? Yes. Every part of Elena screamed yes, but before she could answer, the crowd shifted, conversations dying like someone had cut the music. Elena turned. Lucien Moretti stood at the top of the grand staircase. He'd changed clothes. The shirt that had been flecked with red was gone, replaced by a pristine black suit that probably cost more than Elena's car. His hair was still damp like he'd showered. He looked powerful, untouchable. Every inch the king of an empire built on fear. He descended the stairs slowly, and the crowd parted for him like water. That's him, Maya whispered. Lucien Moretti, the boss himself. I know, Elena said quietly. He never comes to these things. Richard says he hates public events. Elena watched as Lucien moved through the crowd, accepting greetings with subtle nods, not quite smiling. Men who probably terrified their own subordinates looked at him with something close to fear. Women watched him with interest that felt dangerous. He was magnetic, terrifying, impossible to look away from. Then his eyes found Elena across the room. The air left her lungs. He didn't approach, didn't acknowledge her beyond that one long look. But something passed between them. Recognition, warning, something that made Elena's skin feel too tight. Oh my God, Maya breathed. Did he just look at you? No. He definitely just looked at you. You're seeing things. But Maya was right. And worse, Elena could feel other people noticing. Women in expensive dresses turning to see who had caught Lucien Moretti's attention. Men frowning like they were trying to place her face. We should go, Elena said urgently. In a minute, I need to say goodbye to... Now, Maya, please. Something in Elena's voice must have communicated the panic building in her chest, because Maya set down her champagne and nodded. They were halfway to the door when a hand touched Elena's shoulder. She spun around, expecting security. Instead, she found an older woman with silver hair and diamonds that probably required their own insurance policy. Forgive me, the woman said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, but I don't believe we've met. I know everyone in our circle, and you're new. I'm nobody, Elena said quickly. Just a guest. Nobody catches Lucien's eye. The woman's smile sharpened. So clearly you're somebody. I'm Vivian Castellano, Richard's mother. Maya went rigid beside her. Elena Hart, Elena said, because refusing to answer would make things worse. Maya's cousin. Ah. Vivian's gaze swept over Elena, cataloging everything the same way that man had earlier. You're the one who works in that little bookstore in Brooklyn. Maya has mentioned you. The way she said little bookstore made it sound like something quaint, insignificant. Yes, Elena said. How charming. Vivian turned to Maya. Darling, your husband is looking for you. Something about needing to leave early. It was a dismissal wrapped in politeness. Maya recognized it too. She squeezed Elena's hand once, solidarity, before disappearing into the crowd, leaving Elena alone with a woman who looked at her like she was a problem that needed solving. A word of advice, Vivian said quietly, stepping closer. Men like Lucien Moretti don't notice girls like you because they're interested in conversation. They notice you because they see something they want to possess, and once they possess it, they break it. Do you understand what I'm telling you? I'm not... You think you're special because he looked at you? Vivian's voice stayed low, friendly even, but the words cut like knives. You're not. You're just new, fresh, different from the usual women who throw themselves at him. But that novelty wears off quickly, and when it does, you'll be discarded, if you're lucky. Elena's hands were shaking. She clenched them into fists. I'm not interested in Lucien Moretti. Good, keep it that way. Vivian patted her shoulder like they were friends. Go back to your bookstore, Elena. Go back to your simple little life. You'll be much happier. Then she walked away, leaving Elena standing alone in a room full of dangerous people, feeling smaller than she'd ever felt in her life. Elena didn't sleep that night. She lay in her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment in her head. The hallway. The door. The blood on Lucien's hands. The way he'd looked at her across the crowded room. She should report what she'd heard. She knew that. But who would she tell? The police? In a city where half the department was probably on the Moretti payroll? And what had she actually witnessed? A raised voice? A thud? Nothing concrete. Nothing that wouldn't get twisted into her being a hysterical girl who imagined things. Besides, Lucienne was right. She didn't belong in that world. She belonged here, in her small apartment with her simple job and her quiet life. Safe. Invisible. That's what she told herself. She almost believed it, until the flowers arrived. Elena was opening the bookstore the next morning, still exhausted, when a delivery van pulled up outside. The driver carried in an arrangement so large it barely fit through the door. White roses and orchids in a crystal vase that probably cost more than Elena's rent. "Delivery for Elena Hart," the driver said. Her hands shook as she signed for them. There was a card tucked between the flowers. Heavy paper, gold edging. She opened it. "You forgot this world exists. The world hasn't forgotten you." L. Elena's breath caught. No, this wasn't happening. She threw the card in the trash, shoved the flowers into the back room, and tried to focus on work. Customers came and went. She rang up sales. She recommended books. She pretended everything was normal. The flowers arrived again the next day. And the next. Always the same. White roses and orchids. Always a different card with a different message. "You look terrified. I should feel guilty." "I don't. Everyone in that room was performing. You weren't. That's dangerous. Stop throwing the cards away. I know you are." By the fourth day, Elena's boss, Mrs. Chen, pulled her aside. "Who's sending these?" she asked, eyeing the latest arrangement filling the small office. "Nobody," Elena said. "Nobody with expensive taste." Mrs. Chen wasn't stupid. She'd run this bookstore for 30 years in a city where you learn to read between lines. "Is this somebody you want attention from?" Elena didn't know how to answer that, because the truth was complicated. She should be terrified. She was terrified. This man was dangerous, violent, everything she should run from. But something about the messages felt different than she expected. Not threatening, not possessive, almost curious. Like he was studying her, trying to understand why he couldn't stop thinking about the girl in the wrong dress who'd stumbled into his hallway. "I don't know," Elena admitted. Mrs. Chen sighed. "Well, you better figure it out, because men who send flowers like these don't give up easily." That night, Elena broke her own rule. She kept the card. "You should be running. Why aren't you?" She stared at the message for a long time, tracing the handwritten letters. Because these weren't typed. Someone, Lucien, had written them himself. Her phone buzzed. "Maya, are you okay? Richard's mother mentioned you met Lucien Moretti. Please tell me you're being careful." Elena typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on, "I'm fine. It was nothing." But it wasn't nothing. And it didn't stop. The flowers kept coming. The cards kept arriving. And Elena, despite every rational part of her brain screaming to throw them all away, started keeping them. 7 cards, 7 days, 7 messages that felt like someone was slowly peeling back layers of her life to see what was underneath. Then on the 8th day, the flowers didn't come. Elena told herself she was relieved. She was lying. She was closing the bookstore that evening when the black SUV pulled up outside. Her heart stopped. The back door opened. Lucien Moretti stepped out. He wore a dark coat against the October chill, hands in his pockets, looking completely out of place on this quiet Brooklyn street with its worn sidewalks and corner bodegas. But he didn't look uncomfortable. He looked exactly like what he was. A man who owned every space he entered. He walked to the door. Elena's hand hovered over the lock. She should lock it, should call someone, should do literally anything except what she did. She opened the door. "You stopped throwing the cards away," Lucien said. Not a question. "How do you know that?" "Because you're still here. If you'd thrown them away, you would have quit your job, moved apartments, disappeared." He tilted his head slightly. "You didn't." "Maybe I don't have anywhere else to go." "Everyone has somewhere else to go. You chose to stay." Elena's pulse hammered. "What do you want?" "To talk." "We're talking." "Not here." He glanced past her into the small bookstore with its creaking floors and overstuffed shelves. There's a cafe 3 blocks away. Public. Safe. You can leave whenever you want. I don't know you. No. But you're curious about me. Otherwise, you would have called the police after the party. His dark eyes held hers. So let me buy you coffee, Elena. 1 hour. Then I'll disappear if that's what you want. Everything in her screamed this was a mistake, but she grabbed her coat anyway. The cafe was exactly what Lucien promised. Public, warm, filled with college students hunched over laptops. Normal. Safe. Elena ordered tea. Lucien ordered nothing. They sat across from each other in a corner booth, and Elena realized she had no idea what to say to a man like this. You're not what I expected, Lucien said finally. What did you expect? Fear, more questions, demands for explanations. He leaned back, studying her with that same intensity he'd had in the hallway. Instead, you're just quiet. I'm always quiet. Even when you're terrified? Especially then. Something almost like a smile crossed his face. Smart. Is that why you're here? Because I didn't scream? I'm here because I can't stop thinking about you. He said it like he was confessing to something shameful. Which is inconvenient. Elena's hands tightened around her tea. I'm nobody. You keep saying that. It's not true. You don't know anything about me. I know you work in a bookstore that barely breaks even. I know you live alone in a studio apartment in Prospect Heights. I know your parents died 3 years ago in a car accident on the I-95. I know you have no siblings, no close friends except Maya, and you spend most nights reading until you fall asleep with the light on. Ice flooded Elena's veins. You investigated me. Of course I did. That's standard procedure. His voice stayed calm. Someone sees something they shouldn't. I need to know who they are, whether they're a threat. And am I a threat? No. He leaned forward. You're something much more complicated. What does that mean? It means you looked at me that night and you weren't impressed. You weren't trying to get my attention or climb some social ladder. You were just scared, honest, real. His jaw tightened. I've spent 15 years surrounded by people who perform every second of their lives. You don't know how. Elena's throat was tight. I should go. You should. But he didn't move. Neither did she. But you won't, because you're curious too. You want to understand why a man like me would notice a girl like you. I already know why. Your mother. Elena stopped. Vivian Castellano isn't my mother. She's Richard's. Lucien's expression hardened. What did she say to you? That I'm nobody. That you break things. That I should go back to my simple little life and stay there. She's not wrong. The admission hit like cold water. Then why are you here? Elena asked. Lucien was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was lower, rougher, because for the first time in years, I met someone who doesn't want anything from me, and I don't know what to do with that. Elena's heart was racing. This was insane. She barely knew this man. Everything about him screamed danger, but something in his eyes looked almost lost. I'm not interested in your world, she said quietly. I know. I can't be part of it. I know that too. Then what are we doing here? Lucien reached across the table. His hand stopped just short of touching hers. I don't know, but I can't seem to stay away from you. Elena looked at his hand, large scarred knuckles, a thin white line across his palm that looked like an old knife wound. Hands that had done terrible things, hands that were shaking slightly. She should stand up, walk away, block his number, refuse the flowers, forget this ever happened. Instead, she closed the distance between them. Her fingers brushed his. Lucien went completely still. 1 hour, Elena whispered. You said 1 hour. Then you disappear. Yes. I'm holding you to that. But neither of them moved to leave. They sat there in the warm cafe while outside the sun set over Brooklyn, and Elena felt the ground shift beneath her feet. This was the moment everything changed. She knew it. He knew it, and neither of them was strong enough to stop it. The hour turned into 3. They talked until the cafe closed, until the barista started stacking chairs with pointed looks, until the streets outside went quiet, except for distant sirens and the rumble of late-night trains. Lucien walked Elena back to her apartment building, keeping a careful distance between them that felt more dangerous than if he'd touched her. "This doesn't happen again," Elena said at her building's entrance. "No," Lucien agreed, but his eyes said otherwise. She made it 2 days before she saw him again. He was waiting outside the bookstore when she arrived for her morning shift, leaning against that same black SUV with his hands in his pockets. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he'd slept as poorly as she had. "You said you'd disappear," Elena said. "I lied." "You can't keep doing this." "I know." He pushed off the SUV, closing the distance between them. "Have dinner with me." "No." "Elena." "No." She fumbled with her keys, her hands shaking. "This is insane. You're you, and I'm nobody. This doesn't make sense." "Since when does anything make sense?" She finally got the door unlocked, but before she could escape inside, Lucien caught her wrist. Not hard, just enough to make her stop. "One dinner," he said quietly. "If after that you still want me gone, I'll go. I promise." Elena knew she should refuse, knew this was a road that led nowhere good. But she was so tired of being invisible, of living a safe, small life where nothing ever happened. And this man, this dangerous, complicated man, looked at her like she mattered. "One dinner," she heard herself say. The smile that crossed Lucien's face was devastating. Baishad. He picked her up that Friday in a car that probably cost more than she'd earned in 5 years. No driver, just him, which somehow made it feel more intimate, more real. "Where are we going?" Elena asked as they pulled into traffic. "Somewhere quiet." That could mean anything. Elena's imagination supplied a dozen terrible scenarios, each worse than the last. But Lucien drove them to a small Italian restaurant tucked into a side street in Greenwich Village, the kind of place with checkered tablecloths and candles and wine bottles, where the owner greeted him by name and led them to a private table in the back. "You come here often?" Elena asked once they were alone. "My father used to bring me here when I was a kid." Lucien's expression softened slightly. "Before everything went to hell." It was the first personal thing he'd shared that wasn't part of some investigation file. Elena leaned forward. "What happened to him?" "He was killed, shot outside our house when I was 19. Lucien's voice stayed even, but his hands tightened on the menu. "Rival family. They wanted to send a message." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. He knew the risks. We all do." The waiter appeared before Elena could respond, and Lucien ordered for both of them in fluid Italian that sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. The waiter nodded and disappeared. "You speak Italian?" Elena asked. "My grandmother refused to speak English. If you wanted to eat at her table, you learned." Something almost like warmth entered his eyes. She was terrifying, 90 pounds of rage and opinions. "Was? Died 5 years ago, lung cancer." Elena watched him carefully. "You loved her." "She was the only person who ever told me the truth." Lucien met her gaze. "Everyone else in my life performs, tells me what I want to hear. She didn't give a damn about any of that. If I was being an idiot, she'd say so." "Sounds like my mother." "Tell me about her." So Elena did. She talked about her mother's terrible singing voice, about Sunday mornings at the farmer's market, about the way she'd always kept a book in her purse for unexpected moments. She talked about her father's quiet strength, his terrible jokes, the way he'd loved her mother like she was the only woman in the world. And Lucien listened like every word mattered. The food arrived, pasta that melted on her tongue, wine that tasted like dark cherries and summer nights. They talked through dinner, through dessert, through coffee, about books and movies and the strange loneliness of living in a city full of millions of people. For 3 hours, Lucien wasn't a mafia boss, and Elena wasn't nobody. They were just two people trying to figure out why they couldn't stop thinking about each other. "I should take you home," Lucien said finally, though he made no move to stand. "You should." But neither of them moved. "This is dangerous," Elena said quietly. "Whatever this is. I know. People like me don't survive in your world." "No," Lucien agreed. "They don't." Then why are we doing this? He reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. Because I'm tired of surviving, and you make me want to live. The honesty in his voice broke something open in Elena's chest. Take me home, she whispered. He did, but he kissed her first. Outside her building, under the weak streetlight, Lucien pulled her close and kissed her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. Elena kissed him back, her hands fisting in his jacket, every rational thought dissolving into heat and want, and the terrifying knowledge that she was falling for someone who could destroy her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lucien pressed his forehead against hers. This changes things, he said. I know. My world, it's not kind to the people I care about. I know that too. Elena? She kissed him again to stop the warning she knew was coming. Then she pulled back, her hand on the door handle. Good night, Lucien. She made it inside before her knees gave out. Tic-tac. After that, there was no pretending anymore. Lucien called her every night, showed up at the bookstore with coffee the way she liked it, sent flowers with messages that made her laugh despite herself. Mrs. Chen says you're distracted. I'm not sorry. You bit your lip 3 times during our call last night. I counted. Stop overthinking. It's just dinner. It's not just dinner. Maya noticed immediately. You're seeing someone, Shaub, she said during their coffee date 2 weeks later. No. Elle, you're glowing. You check your phone every 5 seconds. You smile at nothing. Maya leaned forward. Who is he? Elena couldn't tell her, wouldn't tell her, because the moment she said his name out loud, this fragile thing between them would become real, dangerous, subject to everyone's opinions and warnings. Just someone, Elena said. Someone who makes you happy. Yes. Maya studied her for a long moment. Be careful, okay? I know that look. That's the look of someone falling hard. Just make sure he's worth it. Elena wanted to say Lucien wasn't worth it, that she was being smart and cautious and not letting herself get carried away. But she'd be lying, because somewhere between the coffee dates and late-night phone calls and stolen kisses, Elena had stopped being careful. She'd fallen. The first crack appeared 3 weeks later. Elena was closing the bookstore when 2 men walked in. Expensive suits, cold eyes, the kind of men who made normal people cross the street. We're closed, Elena said, her hand already reaching for her phone. We just need a minute. The taller one smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You're Elena Hart, right? Ice flooded her veins. Who's asking? Friends of Lucien's. We wanted to introduce ourselves. They weren't friends. Elena knew that instinctively. These were the kind of men Lucien warned her about, the ones who saw weakness and exploited it. I don't know what you're talking about, Elena said. Sure you do. The shorter one moved closer. You're the girl he's been spending time with, the bookstore clerk. We just wanted to see what's so special about you. Get out. Relax. We're not here to hurt you. The tall one pulled out a business card, setting it on the counter. But you should know something. Men like Lucien Moretti don't do relationships. They do transactions. And eventually, you'll be the transaction. I said get out. We're going. But do yourself a favor. Ask him about Sofia DeLucci. See what he says. The man tapped the card. When you're ready to have a real conversation, call that number. They left. Elena stood frozen, her heart hammering, staring at the business card like it might bite her. She should throw it away. She picked it up instead. That night, when Lucien called, Elena almost asked, almost said the name Sofia DeLucci just to see how he'd react. But fear stopped her. Because what if they were right? What if this was all some game she didn't understand? You're quiet tonight, Lucien said. Just tired. Liar? His voice softened. What's wrong? Nothing. Elena, I said nothing. Silence stretched between them. Then Lucien sighed. I'll be there in 20 minutes. You don't have to. But he'd already hung up. He arrived in 15, letting himself into her apartment like he'd been doing it for years instead of weeks. Elena was curled on her couch, still in her work clothes, holding a cup of tea that had gone cold. Lucien sat beside her, not touching, just present. Talk to me, he said quietly. So she did. She told him about the men, about their warnings, about the business card currently burning a hole in her kitchen drawer. She watched his expression go from concerned to furious to something darker. "Did they hurt you?" he asked. "No." "Did they touch you?" "No, but what did they look like?" Elena described them. With each detail, Lucian's jaw tightened further. "Rossetti's men," he said finally. "Angelo's crew." "Who?" "Someone trying to send me a message." Lucian stood, pacing her small living room like a caged animal. "By going after you." "I'm not part of this." "You are now." He turned to face her. "The moment I kissed you, the moment I couldn't stay away, you became part of this. And people noticed." "So what does that mean?" "It means I need to make it very clear that you're protected." His hands clenched into fists. "It means I need to have a conversation with Angelo Rossetti that ends with him understanding exactly what happens to people who threaten what's mine." The possessiveness in his voice should have scared her. It didn't. "Who's Sofia DeLucci?" Elena asked instead. Lucien went completely still. "What?" "They told me to ask you about her." For a long moment he didn't answer. Then he sank back onto the couch, his head in his hands. "She was someone I cared about," he said finally. 5 years ago, before I took over the family business. "What happened to her?" "She died." His voice was hollow. "Caught in the crossfire during a territorial dispute. Wrong place, wrong time. She wasn't part of my world, but she paid the price anyway." Elena's chest tightened. "That's why you kept trying to warn me off." "Yes. You think I'll end up like her." "I think my world destroys beautiful things." Lucien looked up, his eyes haunted. "And you're the most beautiful thing I've found in years." Elena moved closer, taking his face in her hands. "I'm not her." "I know. And I'm not running." "You should." "Too bad." She kissed him softly. "You're stuck with me." Lucien pulled her into his lap, holding her like she might disappear. "This is insane." "I know. You're going to get hurt. Maybe. But maybe I won't." She pulled back to look at him. "Maybe we figure out how to make this work." "There's no blueprint for this, Elena. I don't know how to protect you and keep you close at the same time." "So we learn." He kissed her then, desperate, almost rough, like he was trying to memorize the taste of her. Elena melted into him, her fingers tangling in his hair, all her fears dissolving into the certainty that this, him, was worth the risk. When they finally broke apart, Lucien's expression had shifted into something harder. "I need to handle Rossetti," he said. "What does that mean?" "It means you don't leave your apartment alone for the next few days. It means I'm putting security on you whether you like it or not. And it means I'm going to make it very clear that you're untouchable." "Lucien, this isn't negotiable." His voice went cold. "They came after you to get to me. That doesn't happen again." Elena wanted to argue, wanted to say she didn't need protection, didn't want to live in fear, but she'd seen the violence in his eyes when he talked about Sofia. She'd heard the weight in his voice when he said mine. This was the reality of loving a man like Lucien Moretti. "Okay," she said quietly. He stayed with her that night. Not sex, just presence. He held her in her narrow bed while she drifted in and out of sleep, and every time she woke, he was there, watching her like he was memorizing every detail. "What are you thinking?" she whispered around 3 in the morning. "That I should let you go." "But you won't." "No." His arms tightened around her. "I'm too selfish for that." Elena turned in his arms, pressing her face against his chest. She could hear his heartbeat, steady, strong, alive. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Good. Fear keeps you careful." "Are you scared?" Lucien was quiet for a long moment. Terrified. Something about that admission made Elena feel less alone. They fell asleep tangled together as the city hummed outside her window. On a check, security appeared the next morning. 2 men in dark suits who introduced themselves as Marcus and James then proceeded to follow Elena everywhere, to work, to the grocery store, even to the bathroom, though they at least waited outside. Mrs. Chen took one look at them and pulled Elena into the back room. "What kind of trouble are you in?" she asked. "I'm not." "Don't lie to me, girl. I've lived in this city long enough to recognize muscle when I see it." She gripped Elena's shoulders. Whatever you're mixed up in, be smart. These men, they protect valuable things, which means someone powerful thinks you're valuable. It's complicated. It always is, Mrs. Chen sighed. Just promise me you know what you're doing. Elena wanted to promise that. Wanted to say she had everything under control. But she'd be lying. I'm trying, she said instead. That night, Lucien called from an unknown number. Don't use your regular phone for the next week, he said without preamble. I'm having it checked for bugs. You think they're listening? I think Rossetti is smarter than I gave him credit for, and I'm not taking chances. His voice softened slightly. How are you holding up? Your security detail is very thorough. Good. They're supposed to be. Lucien, this is insane. I can't live like this. It's temporary, just until I handle things. How are you handling things? Silence. Lucien? You don't want to know. But she did. She wanted to know exactly what kind of man she'd fallen for, what he was capable of, how far he'd go to protect her. Tell me anyway, she said. Another pause, then, Rossetti and I are having a meeting tomorrow, a negotiation. He backs off, leaves you alone, and in exchange, I don't dismantle his operation piece by piece. And if he doesn't agree? Then I dismantle his operation anyway. The casual violence in his voice should have terrified her. Instead, some dark part of Elena felt protected. Be careful, she said. Always am. Liar. She heard him smile. Get some sleep, Elena. I'll call you tomorrow. But he didn't. Tomorrow came and went without a word. No call, no text. Even Marcus and James seemed tense, checking their phones constantly, exchanging looks Elena couldn't read. By the second day, Elena was frantic. Where is he? She demanded when Marcus's phone buzzed for the 10th time. I can't. Tell me where he is. Marcus and James exchanged a look. Finally, James spoke. There was a complication with the Rossetti meeting. Ice flooded Elena's veins. What kind of complication? The kind we can't discuss. Is he hurt? We don't know. What do you mean you don't know? We mean he went into that meeting yesterday afternoon and nobody's heard from him since. Marcus's jaw was tight. His second in command is handling things, but what? But this isn't normal. Mr. Moretti always checks in. Elena's hands were shaking. Take me to him. We can't do that. I don't care what your orders are. Take me to him now. Miss Hart, now. Something in her voice must have broken through because Marcus nodded slowly. They drove to a warehouse in Red Hook, the kind of neighborhood where questions didn't get asked and screams didn't get reported. Marcus led her through a side entrance, past men with guns who knotted them through, into a maze of corridors that smelled like rust and blood. Then she saw him. Lucien sat in a back office, his shirt torn and bloodied, his face bruised, his hands wrapped in makeshift bandages. He was arguing with a man in an expensive suit, his voice rough but steady. Don't care what the terms were. Rossetti broke protocol. Then he saw Elena. Everything stopped. What the hell is she doing here, Lucien demanded, standing so fast his chair fell backward. She insisted, Marcus said. Get her out. No. Elena pushed past Marcus, crossing the room to stand in front of Lucien. What happened to you? Nothing. You're bleeding. It's not mine. The lie was so obvious it would have been funny if Elena wasn't so furious. Get out, she said to the room at large. The man in the suit looked at Lucien. Boss? Lucien's jaw tightened. Give us a minute. They filed out, leaving Elena alone with a man who looked like he'd barely survived a war. You can't be here, Lucien said. Too bad. I'm here. Elena reached for his hand, but he pulled away. Let me see. Elena, let me see. Finally, he unwrapped the bandages. His knuckles were split open, bruised dark purple, defensive wounds mixed with offensive ones. Elena's throat went tight. What happened? She asked quietly. Rossetti didn't want to negotiate. So you fought him? His men jumped me on the way out. Ambush. Lucien's voice was flat. I handled it. This is handling it? I'm alive. They're not. That's handling it. The casual admission made Elena's stomach turn. You killed them. Yes. How many? Does it matter? Yes. Lucian met her eyes. 3, maybe 4. I stopped counting. Elena should run, should walk out of this warehouse and never look back. Instead, she pulled him down and kissed him. Lucian froze. Then his hands came up to frame her face, careful despite the split knuckles, and he kissed her back like she was the only thing keeping him tethered to humanity. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Elena pressed her forehead against his. "Don't shut me out," she whispered. "I'm trying to protect you." "I don't care. Don't shut me out." "Elena, you don't understand what you're asking." "I understand perfectly." She pulled back to look at him. "I understand you're dangerous. I understand your world is violent. I understand loving you might destroy me." Her voice cracked. "But I'm choosing it anyway. So stop trying to make that choice for me." Lucian stared at her like she'd spoken a language he didn't understand. "You're insane," he said finally. "Probably. This won't end well." "Maybe not. But I'd rather have this," she gestured between them, "than spend the rest of my life playing it safe." Something shifted in Lucian's expression. The careful control he always maintained cracked, and underneath Elena saw raw need mixed with fear. "Come home with me," he said. "Where?" "My place. The penthouse." His hands tightened on her waist. I just need you close tonight." Elena knew what he was really asking. This was the point of no return. Going home with him meant crossing a line they couldn't uncross. It meant accepting not just the man, but everything that came with him. "Okay," she said. Relief flooded his face. He grabbed his coat, gave quick orders to the man who'd been in the office earlier, then led Elena out through the maze of corridors to where his car waited. The drive to Manhattan felt endless. Lucien held her hand the entire time, his thumb tracing circles on her palm, not speaking. His building rose from Midtown like a steel and glass tower. The lobby was all marble and modern art. The elevator required a special key for the penthouse, and then they were in his space. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Modern furniture mixed with unexpected touches. Old books, a worn leather jacket thrown over a chair, photographs tucked into corners. The home of someone who lived alone but hadn't always wanted to. "Drink?" Lucien asked. "No." He poured himself whiskey anyway, downing it in one swallow. Elena moved behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. She could feel the tension in his body, the barely controlled violence still humming under his skin. "Talk to me," she said quietly. "About what?" "Whatever you're thinking." Lucien was silent for a long moment. Then he turned in her arms. "I'm thinking I should have let you walk away that first night," he said. "I'm thinking I'm being selfish keeping you in my life. I'm thinking," his voice cracked slightly, "I'm thinking you're going to get hurt because of me, and I won't survive that." "You don't know that." "I do. Because it's already happening. Rossetti went after you to hurt me. Next time it'll be someone else. Someone worse." His hands came up to cup her face. "I can't lose you, Elena, but I can't keep you safe either, and that's tearing me apart." Elena kissed him softly. "Then stop trying to do it alone," she said against his lips. "What?" "Stop trying to protect me from your world by keeping me at arm's length. Let me in, all the way. Teach me how to survive this." She pulled back to meet his eyes. "You're right that I don't understand your world, so help me understand it. That's not, I'm stronger than you think. I know how strong you are. That's not the point." "Then what is?" Lucien's expression twisted with something that looked like pain. "The point is, I love you. And love makes you vulnerable. And in my world, vulnerable means dead." The confession hung between them. Elena's heart stopped, restarted. "Say that again," she whispered. "Which part?" "The part where you love me." Lucian closed his eyes. "I love you. I've loved you since that first night when you looked at me like I was just a man instead of a monster. And it's the most terrifying thing I've ever felt." Elena felt tears slip down her cheeks. "I love you too," she said. When Lucien kissed her this time, it wasn't gentle. It was desperate, consuming, like he was trying to crawl inside her skin and stay there. Elena kissed him back with the same intensity, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. They stumbled toward the bedroom, shedding clothes between kisses. Lucienne's hands were everywhere, her hair, her waist, her hips, mapping every inch of her like he was afraid she'd disappear. When they finally fell into bed together, wrapped around each other with the city lights painting patterns across their skin, Elena felt the last of her walls crumble completely. This was it. The point of no return. She'd given her heart to the most dangerous man in New York, and there was no taking it back. Lucien held her afterward, his arms wrapped tight around her, his face buried in her hair. "I'll protect you," he whispered. "Whatever it takes. I'll keep you safe." Elena wanted to believe him, but somewhere in the back of her mind she heard Vivian Castellano's warning. They break things. And Elena wondered if she'd just handed Lucien Moretti the weapon that would eventually destroy them both. Bonsik. She woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and Lucien's phone buzzing insistently from the nightstand. He grabbed it without opening his eyes. "What?" Elena couldn't hear the response, but she watched Lucien's entire body go rigid. "When?" His voice went cold, dangerous. "How many?" A pause. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up and sat up, running a hand through his hair. "What's wrong?" Elena asked. Rossetti retaliated. Lucien was already moving, pulling on clothes with mechanical efficiency. "Hit one of my warehouses. Killed 2 of my men." "Oh, God. I need to go." He leaned down, kissing her hard. "Stay here. Don't leave the building. Don't answer the door for anyone except Marcus or James. Understand?" "Lucien, do you understand?" The intensity in his eyes made her nod. "Good." He pulled on his jacket. "I'll call you when I can." Then he was gone, leaving Elena alone in his enormous penthouse with the smell of their bodies still on the sheets, and the terrifying knowledge that the war she'd stepped into the middle of had just escalated beyond anything she could control. She curled back under the covers, Lucien's scent surrounding her, and tried not to think about how many people might die today because of the love neither of them had been strong enough to walk away from. Outside, the city hummed its usual song, unaware, uncaring, indifferent to the small human drama playing out in the spaces between power and violence and desperate, impossible love. Elena stayed in the penthouse for 3 days. Marcus brought her clothes from her apartment. James stood guard outside the door. Lucien called when he could. Brief, tense conversations that told her nothing except that he was alive and the situation was getting worse. On the 4th day, Maya showed up. Elena heard the shouting in the hallway before Marcus opened the door, his expression apologetic. "She won't leave," he said. "Claims she's family." Maya pushed past him, designer bag swinging, fury radiating from every pore. "What the hell is going on, Elena?" "Maya, you shouldn't be here." "I've been calling you for days. Your apartment is empty. Mrs. Chen says you haven't been to work." Maya's eyes swept the penthouse, landing on the expensive furniture, the city view, the unmistakable signs that someone lived here. "Whose place is this?" Elena's throat went tight. "It's complicated." "That's not an answer." Maya moved closer, her voice dropping. "Richard's been on edge all week. Something big is happening with the families. People are getting hurt. And you disappear into thin air?" "I'm safe. Are you?" Maya grabbed her shoulders. "Because from where I'm standing, you look terrified." She was right. Elena had barely slept, jumping at every sound, checking her phone obsessively for updates from Lucien that never came with enough detail to calm the fear eating her alive. "I'm with someone," Elena said finally. "Who?" The answer stuck in her throat. Because saying his name would make it real, would open this fragile thing between them to judgment and warning and all the reasons it could never work. But Maya deserved the truth. "Lucien Moretti," Elena whispered. Maya went completely still. "Tell me you're joking." "I'm not." "Elena." Maya's hands dropped. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I know it's dangerous." "Dangerous?" Maya laughed, the sound brittle. "Dangerous is dating a guy with a gambling problem. This is suicide. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. He's the most powerful crime boss on the East Coast. He's got enemies everywhere. And you," she gestured at Elena, "you're a weapon they can use against him." "I'm not." "You are. The moment you got involved with him, you painted a target on your back. Maya's voice cracked. God, Elle, what were you thinking? I wasn't thinking. I was feeling. Elena's hands clenched into fists. For the first time in years, I felt something other than grief and loneliness. He makes me feel alive. He's going to get you killed. Maybe, but that's my choice. Maya stared at her like she was looking at a stranger. I can't watch you do this. Then don't. The words came out harsher than Elena intended. I'm not asking for your permission, Maya. I'm just telling you the truth. Silence stretched between them, heavy with 3 years of friendship, and the sudden realization that they were standing on opposite sides of a line neither had known existed. Richard's mother was right about you, Maya said quietly. You are in over your head. The mention of Vivian Castellano made Elena's stomach turn. What does she have to do with this? She's been asking about you, about who you're seeing. Richard told her to drop it, but you know Vivian. Maya's expression shifted into something that looked like pity. She doesn't let things go. Alarm bells screamed in Elena's head. What did you tell her? Nothing, but she has her own sources. Maya grabbed her bag. Be careful, Elle, because whatever you think you have with Lucien Moretti, it's not going to end well. It never does with men like him. She left before Elena could respond. Marcus closed the door behind her, his expression carefully neutral. Elena sank onto the couch, Maya's words echoing in her head. She pulled out her phone, started typing a message to Lucien, then deleted it. He had enough to worry about without her adding paranoia about Vivian Castellano. But the unease wouldn't leave. I'm Tug. Lucien came home that night looking like he'd aged 5 years in 4 days. Blood stained his shirt cuff. His knuckles were split again. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. Elena met him at the door, pulling him into her arms without a word. 2 more dead, he said into her hair. Rossetti's hitting my supply lines, my distribution network, everything I've built. What are you going to do? End it. His voice was flat, dead. One way or another, this ends tomorrow. Fear crawled up Elena's spine. What does that mean? Lucien pulled back, his hands framing her face. It means I'm meeting with the commission, the heads of all 5 families. We're going to settle this the old way. What's the old way? You don't want to know. But she did. She wanted to understand every dark corner of his world, every rule and ritual that governed the violence. Tell me anyway, she said. Lucien studied her for a long moment. Then he moved to the bar, pouring himself a drink. The commission settles disputes between families, he explained. When things escalate beyond normal business, when blood starts flowing in the streets, they step in, make a ruling. And you think they'll rule in your favor? I think Rossetti broke protocol by going after you. That's personal, not business. The commission doesn't like personal. But the Castellanos sit on the commission, and Vivian has never liked me. There it was. The confirmation of Elena's fear. Maya said she's been asking about me, Elena said quietly. Lucien's entire body went rigid. When? Today. Maya came here. She figured out we're together. What did she tell her? Nothing. But Vivian has sources. Lucien set down his drink with enough force to crack the glass. Damn it. What? If Vivian knows about you, she'll use it. She'll tell the commission I'm compromised, that I've let personal feelings interfere with business. His hands clenched into fists. She'll argue I'm weak. Are you? The question came out before Elena could stop it. Lucien turned to face her, his expression raw. Yes, when it comes to you, I'm weak. I'd burn down every family in New York before I let them hurt you, and that makes me a liability. Then don't go to the meeting. I have to. If I don't, they'll see it as an admission of guilt. They'll strip my territory, dismantle my organization, and I'll be lucky if they let me live. So you're walking into a trap. Maybe. He moved closer, pulling her against him. But I don't have a choice. Elena held him tight, her face pressed against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Steady, strong, alive. For now. Come with me, she said suddenly. What? Run. Leave New York. We can disappear. Start over somewhere they can't find us. Lucien's laugh was bitter. You can't run from this life, Elena. It follows you, and everyone I care about would pay the price. Then what do? We survive. He tilted her chin up, kissing her slowly. And we trust that I'm smarter than Vivian Castellano thinks I am. But the fear in his eyes suggested he wasn't sure that was true. Sect. The next morning, Lucien left before dawn. Elena woke to an empty bed and a note on the pillow. Stay here. Don't leave. Don't answer the door for anyone except Marcus. I love you. L. She clutched the note like it was a lifeline. Hours crawled past. Elena paced the penthouse, called Lucien's phone a dozen times, got voicemail every time. Marcus stood outside the door, silent and immovable. Then, around noon, everything went wrong. The power cut out. Elena was in the kitchen when the lights died, plunging the penthouse into dim gray light from the windows. Her heart kicked into overdrive. Marcus? She called. No answer. She moved toward the door, her hand reaching for the handle. It opened before she touched it. But it wasn't Marcus. 3 men in black tactical gear flooded into the penthouse, moving with military precision. Elena tried to scream, but one of them clamped a hand over her mouth. Another grabbed her arms, and suddenly she was being dragged backward. She fought, kicked, bit down hard on the hand covering her mouth until she tasted blood. The man swore, yanking his hand back, and Elena screamed, "Lucien, help!" Something hard hit the back of her head. The world went dark. She woke to the smell of mildew and old concrete. Elena's head throbbed. Her wrists burned where zip ties cut into her skin. She was sitting in a metal chair in what looked like an abandoned warehouse, lit by a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. Panic clawed at her throat. She's awake! Elena's head snapped up. A man stepped out of the shadows. Expensive suit, gray hair, cold smile. She recognized him from somewhere, but her concussed brain couldn't place where. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice rough. "Angelo Rossetti." He pulled up another chair, sitting across from her like they were having coffee instead of this. Lucien's enemy, and now his biggest mistake. Ice flooded Elena's veins. This was the man Lucien had gone to war with, the man who'd killed his people. "He'll kill you for this," Elena said. "Maybe, but first we're going to have a conversation." Angelo leaned forward. "See, I've been trying to understand what makes you so special. What made Lucien Moretti, the most ruthless son of a bitch in New York, go soft?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't play stupid. It's beneath you." Angelo pulled out his phone, showing her a photo. Elena at the bookstore. Another of her leaving Lucien's building. A third of them kissing outside her apartment. Her stomach turned. "You've been watching me. For weeks, trying to figure out if you're the weakness everyone says you are." Angelo pocketed the phone. "And you know what I discovered?" Elena didn't answer. "You're not in this for money. You're not some gold digger trying to climb the social ladder. You actually love him." Angelo laughed. "Which makes you either the bravest woman I've ever met or the stupidest." "Let me go." "Oh, I will. Eventually. But first, Lucien needs to learn a lesson about what happens when you let personal feelings interfere with business." Fear turned to fury. "You think hurting me will break him?" "I think it already has." Angelo stood, gesturing to someone in the shadows. "He's at the commission meeting right now, probably arguing his case, trying to convince them he's still in control." "He is in control." "No, you are. And you don't even realize it." Angelo moved toward the door. "When he finds out we have you, he'll do anything to get you back. And that's when we win." "You're wrong." "Am I?" "Because from where I'm standing, Lucien Moretti just handed his enemies exactly what they needed to destroy him." Angelo paused at the door. "For what it's worth, I hope you survive this. You seem like a nice girl, but nice girls don't last long in our world." He left. Elena sat alone in the dark, her wrists bleeding against the zip ties, her head pounding, and the terrible knowledge that Angelo was right crushing her chest. She was the weapon. She was the weakness. She was going to get Lucien killed. Time lost meaning in the dark. Elena drifted in and out of consciousness, her head injury making everything foggy. She tried to work the zip ties loose, but they just cut deeper into her skin. Then she heard shouting. Gunfire. The warehouse door slammed open and Lucian burst through, gun drawn, his face a mask of cold fury. Their eyes met across the room. For one heartbeat, Elena saw relief flood his expression. Then someone grabbed her from behind, pressing a knife to her throat. "Don't move," a voice said in her ear. Not Angelo. Someone else. Someone younger. Lucian froze, his gun still raised. "Let her go, Marco." "Can't do that, boss." The knife pressed harder. Elena felt a sting as it broke skin. "Angelo's orders. She's our insurance." "Angelo's dead." Lucian's voice was flat. "I put 3 bullets in his head 20 minutes ago, so whatever he promised you, it's worthless." The man behind Elena, Marco, hesitated. "You're lying." "Call him. Go ahead." Marco shifted and Elena felt the knife waver slightly. He was scared. Good. Scared people made mistakes. "Let her go," Lucian said again, his gun steady. "Walk away. I'll give you a 10-minute head start before I hunt you down." "That's not much of a deal." "It's the only one you're getting." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Elena made her choice. She slammed her head backward, catching Marco in the nose. He swore, his grip loosening, and Elena threw herself forward. The gunshot was deafening. Elena hit the ground hard, her shoulder screaming, unsure if she'd been hit or if Lucien had fired. Then strong hands grabbed her, cutting through the zip ties, pulling her up. "Lucien." He was saying something, but Elena's ears were ringing too loud to hear. She looked past him and saw Marco on the ground, not moving, blood pooling beneath his head. "Did you—" she started. "Yes." Lucian's hands were everywhere, checking for injuries. "Are you hurt? Did they? I'm okay, my head, but I'm—" The world tilted. "I think I'm going to be sick." Lucian caught her as her legs gave out, lifting her like she weighed nothing. More men flooded into the warehouse, his men, weapons drawn, securing the scene. "Get her to the car," someone said. "Hospital," Lucian barked. "Now." Elena tried to protest, but consciousness was slipping away again. The last thing she remembered was Lucian's face above hers, his voice rough with something that sounded like fear. "Stay with me, Elena. You hear me? Stay with me." She tried, but the darkness pulled her under. Med. She woke in a private hospital room to the sound of machines beeping and hushed voices arguing outside her door. Her head felt like it had been split open. Her wrists were bandaged. An IV dripped clear fluid into her arm. The door opened. Lucy walked in, and Elena had never seen him look so destroyed. His shirt was still blood-stained. His hands shook as he reached for hers. "You're awake," he said, his voice cracking. "How long?" 6 hours, concussion, dehydration, minor lacerations. His jaw tightened. Could have been so much worse. "You found me." "Not fast enough." He sank into the chair beside her bed, his head dropping to their joined hands. "I'm so sorry, Elena. This is my fault. All of it." "No. They took you because of me. They hurt you because I was careless. Because I let them see how much you matter." Elena squeezed his hand with what little strength she had. "I'm alive. You saved me. I almost lost you." When he looked up, his eyes were wet. "When I walked into that commission meeting and got word you'd been taken, I lost my mind. Walked out in the middle of deliberations, violated every rule we have. Did they strip my territory? No. Mostly because I killed Angelo Rossetti before they could rule on the dispute." His laugh was bitter. "Solved the problem by creating a bigger one. Now half the commission wants my head for acting without approval." "What does that mean?" "It means I'm walking a tightrope. One wrong move and I lose everything." He stood, pacing the small room. "But none of that matters. You're what matters, and you're not safe in my world." Elena's heart clenched. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying this has to end." "No, Simone." "Look at you, Elena." He gestured at the hospital bed, his voice rising. "You're in a hospital because of me. You were kidnapped, beaten, held at knife point because I was selfish enough to keep you close. I chose this." "You don't know what you chose. You don't understand what my life really is." He moved to the window, his back to her. "I've spent the last 6 hours realizing something. I can't protect you and love you at the same time. The moment I let you into my heart, I made you a target. Tears burned Elena's eyes. So what? You're just going to walk away? For your safety, yes. That's bullshit and you know it. She tried to sit up, pain shooting through her head. You're scared. You're running. I'm trying to keep you alive. By breaking both our hearts? Lucian turned and the anguish on his face almost broke her. If that's what it takes. No. Elena's voice was firm despite the tears. I don't accept that. You don't have a choice. Like hell I don't. She ripped the IV from her arm, ignoring the sting. You don't get to decide this alone, Lucian. This is my life, my choice. Elena, get back in bed. No, not until you listen to me. She stood on shaking legs, crossing the room to stand in front of him. I love you, and yes, your world is dangerous. Yes, I got hurt, but I'm still here, still standing, still choosing you. You shouldn't. Too late. I already did. She grabbed his shirt, forcing him to look at her. So you can either be strong enough to fight for us, or you can be a coward and run. But don't pretend you're doing this for me. You're doing it because you're terrified. The words hit like a slap. Lucian stared at her, chest heaving, something wild and desperate in his eyes. Then he kissed her. Hard, desperate, like she was oxygen and he was drowning. Elena kissed him back with everything she had, pouring 3 days of fear and loneliness and stubborn love into it. When they broke apart, both gasping, Lucien pressed his forehead to hers. You're going to get yourself killed, he whispered. Maybe, but I'd rather die with you than live without you. That's insane. Love usually is. He pulled her closer, and Elena felt the moment he stopped fighting, felt him surrender to the terrifying reality that they were in this together, for better or worse. If we do this, he said quietly, if you stay, things have to change. How? You learn how to protect yourself, how to shoot, how to read danger. You don't go anywhere without security. You accept that my world is now your world. His hands tightened on her waist. And you trust me to keep you safe. Elena nodded. I can do that. It won't be easy. Nothing worth having ever is. Lucien almost smiled. Then his expression shifted into something harder. There's something else you need to know. Dread pooled in Elena's stomach. What? While you were unconscious, I got information from one of Rossetti's men about who leaked your location. His jaw clenched. It wasn't an outsider, Elena. Someone inside my organization betrayed us. Who? I don't know yet, but someone close to me has been feeding information to my enemies. Someone who knew where you were, who you mattered to me. The implications crashed over Elena like cold water. You have a traitor. Yes. And until I find them, no one is safe. Lucian's eyes burned into hers. Not you, not me, no one. Elena's mind raced through the possibilities. Marcus? James? One of the men at the warehouse? What are you going to do? She asked. Lucien's expression went cold, merciless. The mask of the mafia boss sliding back into place. I'm going to find them, he said quietly, and I'm going to make sure they understand exactly what happens to people who betray me. The promise of violence in his voice should have scared her. Instead, Elena just nodded, because this was her world now. And if she was going to survive it, she needed to be just as ruthless as the man she loved. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Inside the hospital room, two people who should never have found each other held tight against the darkness pressing in from all sides. And Elena wondered if love was ever supposed to feel this much like war. Elena left the hospital against medical advice. Lucien tried to argue, but she cut him off with a look that said the conversation was over. She wasn't going to hide in some sterile room while a traitor walked free in his organization. If this was her world now, she needed to face it head on. The safe house Lucy brought her to was 40 minutes outside the city. A modernist structure hidden behind gates and armed guards, surrounded by woods that looked peaceful until you noticed the security cameras mounted in the trees. Stay here, Lucien said as they pulled up. I need to handle some things. What things? Finding the rat. His jaw was tight. I've called a meeting with my inner circle, everyone who knew about you, everyone who had access to your location. I'm coming with you. Elena, I'm coming with you, she repeated. You said if I stay, I learn your world. So teach me. Lucian studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded once. Stay close to me. Don't speak unless I tell you to. And if things go sideways, you run. Understand? Yes. But Elena had no intention of running. Not anymore. But the meeting took place in a warehouse in Queens, neutral territory, away from prying eyes. 8 men waited inside when Lucian arrived with Elena at his side. They all stood when he entered, respect mixed with wariness in their expressions. Marcus was there. James. 3 men Elena didn't recognize, and 2 others she'd seen before at the mansion party, lieutenants in Lucian's organization. Sit, Lucian commanded. They sat. Elena positioned herself against the wall, watching everything. The way they avoided eye contact, the nervous energy rolling off some of them, the cold calculation in others. One of you is a traitor, Lucian said without preamble. Someone in this room fed information to Angelo Rossetti. Information that led to Elena's kidnapping. Information that could have gotten her killed. Silence. Now, you have 2 choices. Lucian's voice was calm, deadly. You confess now, and I make it quick. Or I find out on my own, and I take my time. More silence. Elena watched their faces. Marcus looked angry. James looked scared. One of the lieutenants, a man named Tony, wouldn't stop shifting in his seat. Nothing? Lucian pulled out his gun, setting it on the table in front of him. Nobody wants to speak up? Boss, we're loyal, Tony started. Are you? Lucian's eyes locked on him. Because someone leaked Elena's location within hours of her being at my penthouse. That's a very small circle of people, Tony. You were one of them. Tony went pale. I didn't. Then who did? I don't know. I swear. You're sweating. Lucian leaned forward. Why are you sweating, Tony? Because you're pointing a gun at us. The gun's not pointed at anyone. Yet. Lucian stood, walking slowly around the table. But here's what I know. Rossetti had detailed information. Floor plans of my building, Elena's schedule, security rotations. He stopped behind Tony's chair. That's not casual surveillance. That's insider knowledge. Elena's heart hammered. She could feel the violence building in the room like pressure before a storm. Boss, please. Tony was shaking now. I've been with you for 10 years. Ew. Which makes the betrayal worse. Lucian grabbed Tony's shoulder. Last chance, tell me the truth. I didn't do anything. Lucian looked at Marcus. Check him. Marcus moved fast, patting Tony down. He found a phone in Tony's jacket, not his regular phone. A burner. The room went dead silent. That's not mine, Tony said desperately. Someone planted... Marcus turned it on, started scrolling. His expression darkened. Text messages, Marcus said, to a number registered to one of Rossetti's shell companies. Dates and times matching when Elena was moved. Tony tried to run. He made it 3 steps before Lucian shot him in the leg. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. Tony went down screaming, clutching his thigh as blood poured between his fingers. Elena's hands flew to her mouth, but she didn't look away. This was Lucien's world. This was what justice looked like here. Who else? Lucian demanded, standing over Tony. Who else is dirty? Nobody, I swear, it was just me. Why? Money. Rossetti offered me money. Tony was crying now, his face twisted with pain and fear. He said he'd set me up after he took you down. New identity. Clean start. You sold out your family for a retirement plan. Lucian's voice was flat. You put Elena in danger for cash. I didn't know they'd hurt her. Rossetti said he just wanted leverage. You didn't know. Lucian crouched down, getting in Tony's face. You gave them everything they needed to kidnap an innocent woman, and you didn't know they'd hurt her? Boss, please. No. Lucian stood. There's no please anymore. No second chances. No mercy. He raised the gun. Wait, Tony gasped. There's more. Information Rossetti wanted about the commission, about what? About Vivian Castellano. The name hit like a bomb. Lucian went completely still. What about her? She was working with Rossetti. feeding him information too. Tony's words came out in a desperate rush. She wanted you gone. Wanted to put someone she could control in your place. Elena's blood turned to ice. You're lying, Lucian said. I'm not. I swear on my life. Tony choked on his own blood. She's the one who told Rossetti about Elena. She's the one who wanted the hit. For a moment, Lucian didn't move. Then he pulled the trigger. Tony's body slumped to the floor. The other men in the room stayed frozen, silent. Lucian turned to face them, blood spattered across his shirt. Anyone else have something to confess? He asked quietly. Nobody spoke. Good. Clean this up. I want every communication Tony had analyzed, every contact traced. If there are more rats, I want them found. His eyes swept the room. And nobody much mentions Vivian Castellano. Not yet. Not until I know for sure. They nodded. Lucian crossed to Elena, his hand gentle on her elbow. We're leaving. She let him guide her out, her legs shaking, her mind reeling from what she'd just witnessed. In the car, silence stretched between them. Are you okay? Lucian asked finally. Elena looked at him, at the blood on his hands, at the cold mask he wore like armor. I don't know, she said honestly. You shouldn't have seen that. Yes, I should have. She took a breath. If I'm going to be part of this, I need to see all of it, even the ugly parts. They're all ugly parts, Elena. Then I'll learn to live with ugly. Lucian's hands tightened on the steering wheel. What Tony said about Vivian, do you believe him? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. Not. Finding out meant digging into places even Lucian didn't usually touch. He spent the next 2 days locked in his office at the safe house, making calls, pulling strings, leaning on contacts who owed him favors. Elena watched him deteriorate. Less sleep, less food, more whiskey. The careful control he always maintained started cracking at the edges. On the third day, he got the confirmation he'd been dreading. Elena was reading when he walked into the living room, his phone in his hand, his face ashen. It's true, he said. What? Vivian, everything Tony said. He showed her the phone, transcripts of intercepted communications, financial records, meeting logs. She's been working against me for months, since before I even met you. Elena's stomach dropped. Why? Because I refused to marry into her family. Refused to give her leverage over my organization. Lucian's laugh was bitter. She wanted to control me through an arranged marriage to some cousin I'd never met. When I said no, she decided to remove me entirely. And Rossetti was her weapon. She fed him information, funded his attacks, promised him my territory if he succeeded. Lucian's hands were shaking. She used my feelings for you as the final nail, painted me as weak and compromised to the commission. We have to expose her. We can't. He sank onto the couch. She sits on the commission. Half the families owe her favors. If I accuse her without ironclad proof, they'll turn on me. You have proof. Not enough. Everything I have is circumstantial, could be interpreted as someone trying to frame her. His jaw clenched. She's smart, careful. Every communication went through cutouts and intermediaries. Elena moved to sit beside him. So what do we do? I don't know. For the first time since she'd met him, Lucian looked lost. If I do nothing, she keeps coming after us. If I move against her without the commission's backing, I start a war I can't win. Then we get the commission's backing. How? Elena's mind raced. Then an idea struck. Dangerous, possibly insane, but maybe their only option. We make her reveal herself, Elena said. What? She thinks I'm your weakness. She's been using me to prove you're compromised. Elena grabbed his hands. So we use that. We give her exactly what she wants. Lucian was already shaking his head. No. Whatever you're thinking, listen to me. We stage something. Make it look like I'm leaving you, like you're falling apart without me. Vivian will move to capitalize on it, to finish what Rossetti started. You want to use yourself as bait. I want to give her enough rope to hang herself. Elena's voice was firm. If she thinks you're vulnerable, she'll make a move, a real one, something the commission can't ignore. And if she doesn't take the bait, then we're no worse off than we are now. Lucian stared at her like she'd lost her mind. This is insane. You have a better idea? He didn't, and they both knew it. If we do this, he said slowly, you're going to be in real danger. Vivian won't send flowers and warnings. She'll come to kill you. I know. Elena, I'm doing this, Lucien, with or without your help. She met his eyes. So you can either work with me and keep me as safe as possible, or you can try to stop me and I'll do it anyway. The fear in his expression almost made her back down. Almost. You're the most terrifying woman I've ever met, he said finally. Good. Then we match. Despite everything, Lucien almost smiled. Then his expression hardened into something calculating. Okay, if we're doing this, we do it right. He stood, pacing. We stage a public fight. Make it messy. Make it believable. You move out, go back to your apartment. I make sure word gets around that I'm drinking myself into oblivion over losing you. And then? Then we wait for Vivian to make her move. But you won't be alone. I'll have people watching you 24/7. Hidden. The moment anything happens, they move. What if she sends someone good? Someone who spots the surveillance? Then we hope you're as strong as you think you are. Elena's heart hammered, but she nodded. This was happening. They were going to war with one of the most powerful women in New York's criminal underworld, and Elena was the weapon they'd use to bring her down. The fight happened 3 days later at a restaurant in Midtown. Lucien took Elena to dinner at one of the places where their world gathered. Expensive, exclusive, full of eyes and ears. They made sure to be seen, made sure to look tense. Halfway through the meal, Lucien started the performance. You're not listening to me, he said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. I'm listening, I just don't agree with you. This is about your safety. This is about control. Elena raised her voice. You're trying to lock me away like I'm some possession. I'm trying to keep you alive by suffocating me. She stood abruptly. I can't do this anymore, Lucien. I can't live in a cage. Elena, sit down. No, I'm done. She grabbed her purse. I'm going home, my real home, not some safe house in the middle of nowhere. Lucien stood too, playing his part perfectly. If you walk out that door, What? You'll what? She stepped closer, her voice dropping just enough that only he could hear. This is the plan. Stick to it. Then louder. We're over. She walked out. Behind her, she heard the murmur of conversation starting, phones coming out, word spreading. Perfect. Elena took a cab back to her apartment in Brooklyn, her hands shaking the entire way. When she got inside, she locked the door, checked every window, and tried to calm her racing heart. Somewhere out there, Lucien's hidden security was watching. Somewhere out there, Vivian Castellano was hearing about the breakup. And somewhere out there, a target was painting itself on Elena's back. 3 days passed. Elena went to work at the bookstore, came home alone, acted like her heart was broken. It wasn't entirely acting, even knowing this was fake, even knowing Lucien was orchestrating everything from a distance. The loneliness felt real, the fear felt real. On the fourth night, something changed. Elena was closing the bookstore when she noticed the car across the street. Black sedan, tinted windows, engine running, not one of Lucien's. Her pulse kicked up. She locked the front door, keeping her movements casual, then walked toward the subway like she did every night. The car didn't follow, but when she came up from the underground 3 blocks from her apartment, it was there again. Different car, same feeling. Elena's hand went to her phone. She had a panic button app Lucien installed. One press, and his entire security team would descend. She didn't press it, not yet. She needed whoever this was to make a real move. Something concrete. Something that would prove Vivian's involvement. Elena walked to her building, climbed the stairs, unlocked her apartment door. The knife was already in her hand when she stepped inside. Lucien made her carry it, taught her how to use it, where to cut to disable someone long enough to run. The apartment was dark, empty. Elena flipped the lights, checking every room. Nothing. She was being paranoid. Then she saw the envelope on her kitchen table. White paper, gold edging, her name in familiar script. Her blood turned to ice. She opened it with shaking hands. You made the right choice leaving him, but you still know too much. We'll be in touch about fixing that problem. A friend. No signature, no explicit threat. But the message was clear. They were coming for her. Elena pulled out her phone, her thumb hovering over the panic button. Then the lights went out. She spun, the knife extended, her heart hammering so loud she could barely hear. Footsteps in the hallway outside her door, the doorknob turning. She'd locked it. She knew she'd locked it, but the door opened anyway. A figure stepped inside, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with professional precision. Elena Hart? Male voice, calm, polite. Stay back. She raised the knife. I'm not here to hurt you, just to deliver a message. What message? From Mrs. Castellano. She'd like to meet with you, privately, to discuss your situation. What situation? Your relationship with Mr. Moretti. Your knowledge of certain business matters. She thinks you could use some guidance. Get out of my apartment. I understand you're scared. I said get out. The man took a step forward. Elena pressed the panic button. Then she ran. She made it to the bedroom, slamming the door, shoving her dresser against it. Her apartment had a fire escape outside the window. Lucienne made her check it the first night, made sure she knew the route. She was halfway out the window when the bedroom door exploded inward. The man was faster than she expected. He grabbed her ankle, yanking her back inside. Elena kicked wildly, catching him in the face. He swore, his grip loosening. She fell out the window onto the fire escape, her shoulder hitting metal hard enough to make her vision blur. Move, move, move. Elena scrambled down the ladder, her hands slipping on the rain-slick metal. She could hear the man behind her, following, getting closer. She hit the alley at a dead run. Ahead, the street. People. Lights. Safety. Behind, footsteps pounding closer. Elena burst onto the sidewalk, screaming for help. Headlights flooded the street. Tires screeched. Then Marcus was there, pulling her toward a black SUV while James stepped between her and her pursuer. Get in, Marcus shouted. Elena dove into the back seat. The SUV peeled out before the door even closed. Through the back window, Elena saw James holding the man at gunpoint, while more of Lucien's security flooded the scene. You okay? Marcus asked, his eyes on her in the rearview mirror. Elena's hands were shaking so bad she could barely speak. Fine. I'm fine. Boss is on his way to the secondary safe house. We're meeting him there. Did you get him, the guy? James has him. He'll make sure we get answers. Elena leaned back, her heart still racing, adrenaline making her feel like she might vibrate apart. It worked. They'd gotten Vivian to move. Now they just had to prove it. Lucien met them at the safe house, looking like he'd aged 10 years in 4 days. He pulled Elena out of the SUV before it fully stopped, his hands framing her face, checking for injuries. I'm okay, she said. I'm okay. You're shaking. I'm okay. He pulled her against his chest, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. When I got the alert, but you got it. The plan worked. The plan almost got you killed. But it didn't. She pulled back to look at him. Did James get the guy? Yes, he's being questioned. Lucien's jaw tightened. And he's already given up Vivian, said she hired him directly, gave us bank transfers, communications, the works. So we have proof. We have proof. Relief flooded Elena's system. It's over? Not yet. Lucien's expression was grim. We have evidence, but we still need the commission to act on it. Vivian's powerful. She'll fight this. Then we fight harder. Lucien almost smiled. Then his phone buzzed. He checked it. His entire body went rigid. What? Elena asked. It's from Vivian. He showed her the message. I know what you're trying to do, Lucien. It won't work. Meet me tomorrow. Pier 47, midnight. Come alone, or Elena's name goes to every enemy you have. Let's end this like civilized people. It's a trap, Elena said immediately. Of course it is. Lucien pocketed the phone. But she's right about one thing. This needs to end. You're not going alone. I don't have a choice. Yes, you do. We go together. We face her together. Elena, I'm done hiding, Lucien. I'm done being protected from the consequences of my own choices. She grabbed his hands. We started this together. We finish it together. The fear in his eyes was naked, raw. But beneath it, Elena saw something else. Pride. You're sure? He asked. I've never been more sure of anything. Lucian pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. Then tomorrow night, he said quietly, we end this war. And Elena realized with crystalline clarity that tomorrow night, one way or another, everything would change. They would either destroy Vivian Castellano and claim their future, or they would die trying. There was no middle ground anymore, no safety, no retreat, just the two of them against a woman powerful enough to topple empires, standing at the edge of an abyss, holding hands, ready to jump. Pier 47 sat on the edge of the Hudson River like a forgotten relic of New York's industrial past. Abandoned warehouses loomed in the darkness, their broken windows reflecting moonlight off black water. The air smelled like rust and rotting wood and the promise of violence. Lucian and Elena arrived 15 minutes early. They parked 3 blocks away, approaching on foot through shadows that felt alive with danger. Lucien moved like a predator, his hand never far from the gun holstered beneath his jacket. Elena stayed close, her own weapon, a small pistol Lucien taught her to use over the past week, heavy in her coat pocket. Last chance to change your mind, Lucien said quietly. Not a chance. He looked at her then, really looked, and something in his expression softened despite the violence waiting ahead. When this is over, he said, remind me to tell you something. Tell me now. No, after. His jaw tightened. I need something to fight for. Before Elena could respond, headlights cut through the darkness. A black Mercedes pulled onto the pier, its engine purring to a stop 50 feet away. The driver's door opened. Vivian Castellano stepped out. She wore a long coat over an elegant dress, her silver hair perfect despite the late hour. 2 bodyguards flanked her, professional, armed, scanning the surroundings with practiced efficiency. Mr. Moretti, Vivian called out, I'm pleased you decided to be reasonable. Lucian stepped into the light, Elena beside him. Vivian's expression flickered, surprise, then calculation, then something that looked almost like respect. You brought the girl, she said. How touching. We're here to end this, Lucian said. One way or another. Indeed. Vivian moved closer, her bodyguards matching her pace. You've caused me considerable trouble, Lucien. Angelo Rossetti was a useful tool until you put 3 bullets in his brain. He kidnapped Elena. He was sending a message that you're compromised, weak, unfit to lead. Vivian's smile was cold. The commission agrees with me, by the way. They're meeting tomorrow to discuss your removal. Based on lies you fed them. Based on truth. You've let personal feelings interfere with business. That's always been your weakness, Lucian. You feel too much. Elena felt Lucian tense beside her, but his voice stayed controlled. I have evidence of your involvement with Rossetti. Financial records, communications, testimony from the men you hired. Circumstantial. Easily explained as forgeries created by someone desperate to save himself. Vivian's eyes shifted to Elena. You, however, are a different problem. You know too much. You've seen too much. And unlike Lucien, you have no protection under our rules. Touch her and I burn your empire to the ground, Lucien said quietly. You'll try, but you're outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and out of time. Vivian pulled something from her coat pocket, a phone. She showed them the screen. I've just sent a message to every family head in New York. Proof of your instability, photos of you drinking yourself into oblivion over this girl. Evidence of poor judgment. Fake evidence. Does it matter? Perception is reality in our world. And the perception is that Lucien Moretti has become a liability. Elena's hand went to her pocket, fingers closing around the gun. But Lucien caught her wrist, stopping her. Not yet. What do you want, Vivian? He asked. I want you to step down, voluntarily. Give me control of your operations. In exchange, I let you and your little bookstore girl disappear. New identities. Clean start. You get to live, and I get what I should have had from the beginning. That's not happening. Then you both die tonight. Vivian's voice hardened. I didn't want it to come to this, Lucien. I genuinely didn't. But you've left me no choice. She gestured to her bodyguards. They raised their weapons. Everything happened at once. Lucien shoved Elena behind him, drawing his gun. Vivian's men fired. Bullets ricocheted off the concrete pillar Elena dove behind, her heart exploding in her chest. Then return fire erupted from the darkness. Marcus and James emerged from hiding positions in the warehouses, laying down suppressing fire. More of Lucien's security flooded the pier, turning the abandoned space into a war zone. Elena pressed herself against the pillar, her hands shaking, the gun heavy in her grip. She could hear shouting, gunfire, the wet sound of bullets hitting flesh. Then someone grabbed her from behind. Elena screamed, spinning, raising the gun, one of Vivian's bodyguards. He knocked the weapon from her hand, his arm wrapping around her throat. "Drop your weapons or she dies," he shouted. The gunfire stopped. Elena struggled, gasping for air, clawing at the arm, crushing her windpipe. Through blurred vision, she saw Lucien frozen 20 feet away, his gun still raised. "Let her go," Lucien said, his voice deadly calm. "Put down the gun first." "That's not happening." The arm tightened. Elena's vision started to gray at the edges. Then she remembered what Lucien taught her. "Don't fight the hold. Use it." Elena stopped struggling. Let her body go limp. The bodyguard's grip loosened slightly, adjusting for the dead weight. That was the opening. Elena drove her elbow backward into his ribs, twisted, dropped to her knees. The bodyguard stumbled, his balance broken. Lucien fired. The bodyguard went down. Elena scrambled to retrieve her gun, her hand shaking so violently she could barely hold it. But the fight wasn't over. Vivian had retreated to her Mercedes, using it as cover. Her remaining bodyguard was pinned down, outgunned, bleeding from a shoulder wound. "This is over, Vivian," Lucien Chalichian called out. "Surrender now, and I'll let you live to face the commission." "You think you've won?" Vivian's laugh echoed across the pier. "Even if you kill me, the damage is done. The commission will never trust you again. You'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder. Better than the alternative, which is dying tonight knowing you failed." Silence stretched. Then Vivian stepped out from behind the Mercedes, her hands raised. "You're right," she said. "I have failed. But I'm not going to give you the satisfaction of watching me grovel." She pulled a gun from her coat. Time slowed. Lucien raised his weapon. Marcus shouted a warning. James moved to intercept. But Vivian wasn't aiming at Lucien. She was aiming at Elena. The shot rang out. Elena felt the impact before she heard it. A sledgehammer blow to her chest that knocked her backward. She hit the ground hard, her head cracking against concrete. The world tilted, spun. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Through the haze of pain and shock, she heard Lucien screaming her name, heard more gunfire, heard Vivian's voice cut off mid-sentence. Then Lucien was there, his hands on her face, his voice breaking. "Elena! Elena, stay with me. Look at me." She tried to focus on his face, but everything was fading. "Ambulance is 2 minutes out," someone said. Marcus, maybe? Or James? Elena couldn't tell anymore. "You're going to be okay," Lucien was saying, his hands pressed against her chest, trying to stop the bleeding. "You hear me? You're going to be fine." But the blood kept coming, and Elena felt so cold. She tried to speak, but couldn't form words. Tried to reach for him, but her arms wouldn't move. This was it. This was how it ended. The shy bookstore girl who fell in love with a monster, dying on a pier in the middle of the night, proving everyone right who said she didn't belong in this world. The darkness pulled at her, and Elena let go. Wankant. She woke to the smell of antiseptic and the steady beep of machines. Hospital. Again. Elena tried to move, pain lancing through her chest. A hand caught hers, warm and familiar. "Don't." Lucien's voice rough from exhaustion. "You'll tear your stitches." She turned her head slowly. Lucien sat beside her bed, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. Stubble covered his jaw. Blood, her blood, stained his shirt. "How long?" Elena whispered. 2 days. "You were in surgery for 8 hours. His hand tightened on hers. "The bullet missed your heart by 2 inches, collapsed your lung. You died twice on the operating table." "But I'm alive." "Yes." His voice cracked. "You're alive." Elena took inventory of her body. The pain was manageable. Breathing hurt but worked. She could move her fingers, her toes. "Vivian?" she asked. "Dead. I put 4 bullets in her before she hit the ground. Lucien's expression was empty. She died knowing she failed. The commission called an emergency session. I presented all the evidence, financial records, testimony from her bodyguard who survived, communications. They had no choice but to acknowledge the truth. He leaned back, exhaustion written into every line of his body. Vivian Castellano conspired with Angelo Rossetti to destabilize my organization and orchestrate a coup. The commission has officially sanctioned her posthumously and cleared me of all accusations. So it's over. It's over. Elena closed her eyes, relief flooding through her. They'd survived. Against impossible odds, they'd survived. You should rest, Lucien said. But she didn't want to rest. Didn't want to close her eyes and risk waking up to find this was all a dream. What you wanted to tell me, Elena said. On the pier, before everything went to hell. Lucien was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, moving to the window overlooking the city. I wanted to tell you that you changed everything, he said quietly. I spent 15 years building walls, refusing to feel anything because feeling meant weakness. Then you walked into my life, and those walls came down. Lucien, let me finish. He turned to face her. When Vivian shot you, when I saw you fall, I realized something. I've been so focused on keeping you safe from my world that I forgot the most important thing. What? That you're stronger than I ever gave you credit for. You didn't need me to protect you. You needed me to trust you. His voice roughened. And I'm sorry I didn't trust you sooner. Tears burned Elena's eyes. I'm not that strong. I'm terrified half the time. Being scared doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. He moved back to her bedside, taking her hand again. And you're the most human thing in my life. That's not a compliment. Yes, it is. He lifted her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. You remind me that there's more to life than power and violence. That love isn't a weakness. That maybe I can be something other than a monster. You were never a monster. I was. I am. I've done terrible things, Elena. Things that would make you run if you knew. I know enough. She squeezed his hand. And I'm still here. Lucien's eyes closed. When he opened them again, they were wet. Marry me, he said. Elena's heart stopped. What? Marry me. Not because my world demands it. Not because it makes strategic sense. Just because I love you and I can't imagine my life without you in it. Lucien, I'm lying in a hospital bed with a tube in my chest. Yeah, but I don't care. I should have asked you months ago. I should have said it the first night at the cafe, or in the penthouse, or any of the 1,000 moments when I looked at you and knew you were it for me. He pulled a small box from his pocket, velvet, worn at the edges. This was my grandmother's. The woman who told me the truth even when I didn't want to hear it. I want you to have it. He opened the box. The ring inside was simple. A single diamond set in white gold, elegant without being ostentatious. The kind of ring meant to be worn every day, not locked in a safe. I can't promise you an easy life, Lucien continued. I can't promise my world won't try to hurt you again. But I can promise that every day for the rest of my life, I will choose you. I will fight for you. I will love you with everything I have. His voice broke. So please, say yes. Elena looked at the ring, at this man who'd killed for her, bled for her, broken himself open in ways she knew cost him everything. The smart answer was no. No, because his world was dangerous. No, because she'd been shot twice in 2 months. No, because every rational part of her brain said this would end in tragedy. But love was never rational. Yes, Elena whispered. Lucien's expression shattered with relief. He slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, then leaned down to kiss her, gentle, reverent, like she was something precious he couldn't believe he got to keep. When he pulled back, both of them were crying. We're insane, Elena said. Completely. This is never going to be normal. I don't want normal. I want you. She pulled him down for another kiss, ignoring the pain in her chest, feeling nothing but the certainty that this, him, was worth every scar, every nightmare, every brush with death. They'd earned this, and nobody could take it away. Elena stayed in the hospital for another week. Lucien never left her side except when forced out by nurses who insisted he needed to sleep in an actual bed. He brought her books from her apartment, her favorite tea, fresh flowers every day that weren't white roses for once, but bright wildflowers that made the sterile room feel alive. Maya came to visit on the third day. She stood in the doorway for a long moment, taking in the bandages, the machines, the engagement ring on Elena's finger. "You're completely insane," Maya said finally. "I know. You could have died." "I know that too." Maya crossed the room, pulling Elena into a careful hug that avoided the injuries. "I thought I lost you." "You almost did." Elena hugged her back. "I'm sorry for dragging you into this, for not listening when you tried to warn me. You're my family, Elle. You don't have to apologize for living your life." Maya pulled back, wiping her eyes. "Even if your life gives me a heart attack. How's Richard?" "Relieved. Vivian was making his life hell too. The whole family is breathing easier with her gone." Maya glanced at Lucien, who'd stepped out to give them privacy. "He really loves you." "I know. And you love him." "Yes." "Then I guess that's all that matters." Maya squeezed her hand. "Just promise me you'll be careful, please." "I promise." It was a promise Elena intended to keep. She was released from the hospital 3 weeks after the shooting. Lucien brought her not to the penthouse, but to a house in Westchester. Far enough from the city to feel peaceful, close enough to reach Manhattan in an hour. It sat on 5 acres of wooded property, surrounded by security that was invisible until you knew where to look. "I bought it a month ago," Lucien said as they pulled up the long driveway. "After Rossetti, I realized I needed a place that felt like home instead of a fortress." The house was beautiful, modern but warm, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the trees and a kitchen that actually looked used instead of staged. "You hate it," Lucien said, watching her face. "No, I love it." Elena turned to him. "I just can't believe this is real." "Believe it." He pulled her close. "This is us. This is the life we get to build." Over the next few months, that's exactly what they did. Elena slowly returned to work at the bookstore, though she cut her hours and Mrs. Chen hired additional help. Lucien began the careful process of legitimizing his business interests, stepping back from the violent parts of his empire and building something legal in their place. It wasn't easy. There were threats, challenges from rivals who saw the transition as weakness, nights when Lucien came home exhausted and bloodied, and Elena had to remind him why they were doing this. But they were building something that couldn't be destroyed by bullets or betrayal. They were building a future. The wedding happened on a cool October morning 6 months after the shooting. No cathedral, no press, no criminal families making power plays disguised as celebration. Just a small ceremony in the garden of their Westchester home, surrounded by the handful of people who'd stood by them through everything. Maya and Richard, Marcus and James, Mrs. Chen, a few of Lucien's oldest associates who'd proven their loyalty. Elena wore a simple white dress. Lucien wore a black suit with his grandmother's rosary in his pocket for luck. They wrote their own vows. "I promise to choose you," Elena said, her voice steady despite the tears. "Every day, even when it's hard, even when your world tries to tear us apart, I promise to be your peace when the violence gets too loud." "I promise to protect your heart the way I protect your life," Lucien said. "I promise to be worthy of the trust you've given me. And I promise that every dark thing I've ever done will be balanced by the light you bring." They exchanged rings. They kissed, while their small gathering applauded. And for the first time in his violent, haunted life, Lucien Moretti felt something he'd never believed possible. Hope. Book. 3 years later, Elena stood on the back porch of their home, watching snow fall through the trees. The bookstore had expanded. She and Mrs. Chen now owned 3 locations across Brooklyn, specializing in rare books and first editions. It was profitable, legitimate, everything Elena had never dared dream possible. Lucien's transformation had been slower, but just as real. He'd sold off the criminal enterprises piece by piece, investing in real estate development and legitimate import-export businesses. There was still violence in his world. You didn't walk away from that life completely, but it no longer defined him. The commission had restructured without Vivian's poisonous influence. Lucian sat on it now, using his position to push for modernization, for reducing the bloodshed that had claimed too many lives. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. Elena heard the back door open, felt strong arms wrap around her from behind, pulling her against a familiar chest. "You're going to freeze out here," Lucian murmured against her hair. "I like the cold. It's peaceful." He turned her in his arms, and Elena saw the softness in his expression that had taken years to develop. The walls were still there. You couldn't survive his world without them. But with her, they stayed down. "I have something to tell you," Elena said. "What?" She took his hand, placing it on her stomach. "We're going to have a baby." Lucian went completely still. Then his eyes filled with tears. "Are you sure?" he whispered. "I took 3 tests. All positive." He dropped to his knees in the snow, his hands on her waist, his forehead pressed against her stomach. Elena ran her fingers through his hair, feeling him shake. "I'm terrified," he admitted. "What if I can't protect them? What if my past? Then we'll face it together, just like everything else." She tilted his chin up. "You're going to be an amazing father." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do, because you've spent 3 years learning how to love instead of how to survive. And that's the most important thing any parent can teach." Lucian stood, pulling her into his arms, holding her like she was the only thing keeping him tethered to the earth. "I love you some," he said. "More than I thought I was capable of loving anyone." "I know. I love you too." They stood there in the falling snow, 2 people who'd fought their way through hell to build something beautiful, feeling the future growing between them. The city glowed in the distance, indifferent and eternal. But here, in this moment, they'd won. 5 years after that, on a warm summer evening, Elena sat in the garden while her daughter played in the grass. Isabella was 4 years old, with her father's dark eyes and her mother's quiet strength. She was currently having an intense conversation with a butterfly, explaining in very serious tones why it should land on her hand. Lucien emerged from the house carrying lemonade and that smile he only wore around their daughter, soft, unguarded, completely at peace. "She's negotiating with insects now," he said, sitting beside Elena. "She gets that from you." "I never negotiated with insects." "You know what I mean." He laughed, pulling Elena against his side. They watched Isabella chase the butterfly, her laughter bright in the fading light. "Do you ever regret it?" Lucien asked quietly. "Walking into my world, everything that happened." Elena thought about the question, really thought about it. The fear, the violence, the night she'd spent terrified, the scars she still carried, physical and otherwise. But then she looked at Lucian, at Isabella, at the life they'd built from ashes and blood and impossible choices. "No," she said, "not for a second. Even when I was impossible? Especially then." She turned to kiss him. "You were worth fighting for." "So were you." Isabella ran over, throwing herself into Lucien's lap with complete trust. He caught her easily, swinging her up while she giggled. "Daddy, the butterfly said it has important butterfly business and can't play today," she announced solemnly. "That's very professional of the butterfly. I told it maybe tomorrow." Good negotiating. Elena watched them together, this man who'd once been New York's most feared monster, now making silly voices for his daughter's entertainment, and felt something settle in her chest. They'd made it. Against every odd, every warning, every person who said it couldn't work. They'd made it. The shy bookstore girl and the ruthless mafia boss had found something neither of them knew they needed. Not salvation, not redemption, just love. Complicated, messy, hard-won love that had cost them everything and given them more than they'd ever dreamed possible. As the sun set over their home, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Elena leaned into Lucian's shoulder and listened to their daughter's voice describing her plans for tomorrow's butterfly negotiations. The world outside their gates was still dangerous. Lucien's past still carried consequences. But here, in this moment, they were safe. They were together. They were home. And that was more than enough. Years ago, on a rainy night outside a mansion full of dangerous people, Elena Hart had stumbled into a hallway and met a man who would change everything. She'd been terrified, invisible, convinced she didn't belong. Now she sat in a garden she helped plant, beside a man she'd chosen despite every reason not to, watching their daughter chase butterflies through grass that grew wild and free. She'd found where she belonged, not in the shadows of his world, not in the safety of her old life, but somewhere in between, in the space they'd carved out together, built from honesty and sacrifice and the stubborn refusal to give up on each other. It wasn't the fairy tales she'd read about in books. It was better. It was real. It was theirs. And as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Elena closed her eyes and sent a silent thank you to the universe that had brought them together, to every moment of fear that led to courage, to every brush with death that made life sweeter, to every impossible choice that brought them here, to this perfect, imperfect, hard-won life. Isabella's laughter rang out again, pulling Elena back to the present. Lucien's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining the way they had 1,000 times before. And in that simple gesture, skin against skin, heartbeat matching heartbeat, was everything they'd fought for, everything they'd won, everything that mattered. The future stretched ahead, unknowable and full of possibility. But they would face it the same way they'd faced everything else, together,